Hello everyone, my name is Gabby and today I'm going to be bringing you my July wrap-up. I've read 9 books this month and I'm very excited to dive in and discuss all of them with you. But before I do, I want to make a quick announcement about my future wrap-ups. So I've been thinking, as I'm starting to gain more subscribers and more viewers to my channel, I want you guys to be able to get to know me a little bit better and know the person behind the channel. So each month, instead of strictly focusing on the books that I've read, I want to also talk about TV shows that I've been watching and movies that I've been watching and updates and things going on with my channel. Anything so that you guys can connect to me a little bit more, because I know as someone who watches multiple different creators, I like to get to know the person behind the channel and be able to connect and identify with them in order to feel like I really want to support their content and really want to watch their channel. And so I want to give you guys that same experience and allow you guys to really get to connect and get to know me a little bit better rather than just knowing me for the books that I'm interested in and the things that I talk about on my channel. So I was also thinking that with that I would end my wrap-ups each month with a few quick Q&A questions, because I know people tend to do long Q&As and make that an entire video, but that's sometimes hard to do when you have a smaller channel and sometimes you don't get a lot of questions to be able to make one entire Q&A video out of. So if I even get just 1 or 2 each month, just a few quick questions to answer that can allow you guys to get to know me a little bit better, I would love to do that. So if you want to leave questions down below that you would like me to answer for my August wrap-up, I'd be very thankful for that. But with that all being said, I'm going to get into discussing the 9 books that I read in July. So my first read of the month was Windfall by Jennifer E. Smith. This is the first Jennifer E. Smith novel that I've read, but I absolutely loved it. We follow our main character, Alice, and she buys a lottery ticket for her friend Teddy's 18th birthday, and he ends up winning over $140 million. And so this whole story follows Teddy and how with all this newfound wealth it starts to go to his head, and how that causes a rift between Teddy and Alice, especially with Alice having sort of fallen in love with Teddy, even though he's been a long-time friend of hers, and also dealing with Alice and her having to deal with her past and some of the things that she's been going through, and learning to sort of put that aside and be able to move on and being able to deal with her future and what colleges she wants to go to, and being able to understand charity a little bit better, because that plays a big part into the story, with Alice being someone who is a big supporter of charity and always tries to help out whenever she can, sort of then understanding the difference between doing charity because you feel that you have to and doing it because you want to. And I think this book has such an amazing moral center in talking about something like that, because you don't really see it featured a lot in YA novels, and it was nice to get to read that, as well as the fact that this book takes place in Chicago, which is my home city, so it's always really fun to get to read a book that takes place in an area where you're from or you're relatively familiar with, because it just feels so much more realistic. I love this book so much, and I've been recommended Jennifer E. Smith novels in the past, so I'm really excited to get to read more from her, and I'm glad that this is the first one that I picked up because I really enjoyed it, and I loved the message that the story sends, and I love the focus on charity and giving back, because it's such an important message to send to teenagers and such a really great thing to get out of a book like this. So my next read of the month is one I've pretty much exhausted on my channel, so I'm going to discuss it very briefly, and that is Tosh Hearts Tolstoy by Catherine Ormsby. This was the July Diversity Readers Book Club pick of the month, and I'm going to be leaving all the information down below for our live shows that we do each month, and anything that you need to know if you want to join in and read our books of the month with us. I had the best time picking up Tosh Hearts Tolstoy. It was such an amazing book, and I connected with it so much, and I had the best time discussing it with all of you live. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and asked such amazing questions, and thank you to Catherine Ormsby, the author, for being incredibly supportive of us in the live show and everything that we're doing. So I'm incredibly grateful to her and really glad that I got to pick this book up. I've talked about it on my channel multiple times, so if you want to find out more, you can watch the live show or you can check out some of my past videos, because this one has been in a lot of them, because it's definitely one of my top favorites of the year so far. My next read of the month is another one that I'm really going to quickly blow through, and that's because it was my summer reading book going into junior year of high school, and that is 1984 by George Orwell. I enjoyed this book, and I think it was definitely a lot better than the last George Orwell book that I read, which was Animal Farm, and I had to read that over spring break freshman year of high school. So I was a little bit weary going back into another George Orwell novel, considering how much I hated Animal Farm, but I enjoyed this a lot more because it definitely felt very genuine to my roots with The Hunger Games and Divergent, The Darkest Minds, Red Rising, a lot of those dystopians that deal with corrupt governments. This book is so phenomenal in the fact that it's a very higher level dystopian, and I really enjoyed getting to see that play into the story and sort of getting to see how realistic something like this is, and how it's very easy for these type of things to happen if you put the wrong people in control. So I loved that message, and I loved getting to read it and getting to read a dystopian that was a little bit more higher level than the regular YA dystopians that I read. But of course, the one downfall with reading summer reading books is the fact that you have to do lots of highlighting and annotating and note-taking, and I feel like that takes away from your enjoyment of the story because you're so focused on finding all of those aspects within the book that you're not really focused on the story and getting to just immerse yourself in it. But that's something that I have to deal with every book that I read for school, so I'm starting to get used to it the more that I do it, but it's just not something that I really enjoy because I like being able to fully immerse myself in a story rather than being distracted by outside elements that I have to look for. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed this, and I think if you're someone who loves dystopians and is always looking for a new one to read and you're maybe looking for something a little bit more advanced, this would be one to pick up. My next read of the month was Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. This is the second and final book in the Monsters of Verity duology, and oh my god, did I absolutely love this. I picked up this Savage Song earlier this year, and I immediately wanted the second book the minute that I read the ending, and so I'm really glad this finally came out and I was able to pick it up because it was so fantastic. There's parts of this book that are written in verse, which I'd never read before in a YA novel, and I feel like it was executed so well, and it just felt so eerie and so dark, and was just perfectly blended into the story, and all of the characters were phenomenal. I love some of the new characters that we introduced in this story and some of the focuses of this book. I was incredibly upset by the end of the book and incredibly distraught. I'm so glad that I finally got to pick up something from Victoria Schwab, and I'm really excited to get to read more from her in the future because I've absolutely fallen in love with her books and her writing style, and I'm glad that this was the first that I picked up from her because I think that it was a relatively easy read to get into because once you start to read it, you just get drawn in and you don't want to put it down. So now I'm going to start with my wrap up for booktubeathon. Booktubeathon was at the end of July, and so that was really what a lot of my reading came from this month. I read 5 books during booktubeathon, which is absolutely fantastic, and I enjoyed every single one of them. The first was Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This book completed 3 challenges: read a book entirely outside, read a book in one day, and read a hyped book. So Perks of Being a Wallflower is one of those books that I've needed to pick up forever and just never done it, and I think that's the great thing about booktubeathon for me is that in the past 2 years that I participated, I have gotten opportunities to pick up books that everybody has read and loved that I just haven't gotten to yet. Last year I picked up the Harry Potter series, and then this year I got to pick up Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I'm really glad that I got to read both of those because they're phenomenal books that everyone has talked about that just I, for whatever reason, have not gotten the chance to read. And now because of booktubeathon, I've been able to pick up all of those books, and it makes me really happy because I finally can feel like I'm not left out on a book like this that's so phenomenal. The thing that I love most about Perks of Being a Wallflower is that it's just so raw and genuine because there's a lot of contemporaries that can feel very fluffy and just sort of feel as realistic as they're supposed to be, quite unrealistic because of the way that they're written, but this book deals with a lot of really raw topics. It deals with drug abuse, it deals with sexual assaults and sexual harassment, it deals with love and romance and everything that comes with that in high school and having to deal with some of the struggles with that, and then dealing with anxiety and depression. But I absolutely love this book, and I'm so glad I finally got to pick it up because it was just so different than any contemporary that I've ever read before, but I really appreciated it for the rawness that it brought to the story and the realism that it brought to the story because in a way you're able to connect with it a lot more because it feels so genuine. My next read of booktubeathon was When Dimple Met Rashid by Sonia Manan. This book completed 2 challenges: read a book with a character that is different than yours, and read a book that you bought because of the cover. So the cover is initially what drew me into the story when I first saw it, when ARCs were first being handed out, and then upon hearing the synopsis I was really interested in picking up this book. We follow our 2 main characters, Dimple and Rashid, and they are sort of put into an arranged marriage by their parents, although Dimple has no idea that this is happening, and they end up meeting at a summer program for app design and then end up having to be partners, and so now Dimple sort of has to deal with the situation that her parents have put her into when she wants to focus on her career and focus on app design and focus on college rather than being in a relationship. But when her and Rashid start to sort of grow closer and they start to see beyond, you know, their initial setup, you know, it's Dimple sort of having to deal with her career and then also dealing with this looming relationship between her and Rashid and be able to try to handle the situation that she's been put into. So I love this book a lot, not only for the ending culture that is represented within the story, but I love how it sends the message of following your dreams and going after what you want, even if there's other people who may not be entirely happy with it or maybe holding you back. I also love how this book isn't strictly focused on the app design like I thought it would be. There is a Polaroid scavenger hunt in the story, there's a talent show in the story, there's lots of other fun things that are brought into the plot rather than just strictly about the app design summer program that Dimple and Rashid attend, and I really liked that. I loved Dimple and Rashid's characters and the way that they blend so nicely together, and everything about this book was just so wonderful. It's such a great contemporary, and I know that a lot of people were picking it up for booktubeathon, so I was glad that I was able to be one of those people because the story was absolutely fantastic, and I've wanted to pick it up since the minute that I've heard about it, and I'm glad that I finally got that opportunity because I really enjoyed this one. So my next read of booktubeathon was actually a reread, and that is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This book completed the challenge of reading a book with a person on on the cover. I loved getting to reread City of Bones just because I have not gotten to pick up the Mortal Instruments series since I first read it about 3 years ago, and it's so nice to get to be back in the world and to get to start my reread because I'm going to be reading the Mortal Instruments series and the Infernal Devices in publication order, so I'm not going to be touching the 2 books in The Dark Artifices at all, just because those are relatively recent reads for me and I want to be able to read the books that I haven't picked up in quite a while from Cassie and from the Shadow World. So I'm really excited to be starting my reread and get to be able to get back into the Shadow World. I think my favorite thing about reading this book is that I've been able to see how much Cassie has grown as an author, being able to go back to this first book, because when I initially read it, I wasn't reading it to analyze it. I was reading it because vampires, werewolves, fairies, shadow hunters, funny, witty dialogue, and hot guys. Like, I wasn't really looking at it to be objective because I read this book first before I even had my channel. So now picking it up a second time after having read everything that Cassie has put out and seeing how much she's grown as an author, it's interesting to read this and see how, in a way, there's a lot of YA cliches and how it's not like the most perfect YA novel out there like I made it out to be. And I still love this book and it's still a 5 out of 5 star read for me, and I will always love this book. But it's really amazing to see how much Cassie has grown as an author, because I know I felt that way, but it's actually really getting to see it and really being able to understand that I appreciate it a lot more. And I'm just so happy to be back in this world. I love all of the characters, I love the entire story, and I'm so excited to continue along with my reread. And this first book was just absolutely the tip of the iceberg. I'm so excited to dive in more and to be able to discuss this series more with you guys on my channel. And so my final 2 reads of booktubeathon were the final 2 books in a trilogy, Never Fade and In the Afterlife, the 2nd and 3rd book in the Darkest Minds trilogy by Alexandra Bracken. So I've finally gotten a chance to finish off this trilogy and I absolutely loved it. Although it was slightly predictable because I've read so many other dystopians like The Hunger Games and Divergent and Red Rising, other stories that eventually when you start to read a lot of dystopians, you start to sort of get into the pattern of them and it makes it a little bit easier to figure out what's going to happen. I still loved this trilogy nonetheless. I feel like as much as it's a lot more lighthearted than Passenger and Wayfarer, it also deals with some pretty dark topics and also deals with some very interesting concepts, and I liked getting to see the story play out. I loved all of the characters. It was just such a fun read and such a perfect trilogy to pick up during booktubeathon because I absolutely flew through these books, and then once I started reading I couldn't put them down, and I'm so happy I finally got to pick them up. I'm really excited for the movie adaptation to come out next year and to see what they do with this world on screen. I'm just over the top with these books. The one thing about them, as much as I really enjoyed reading them, it was actually upsetting to see some of the things happen that I thought were going to happen. So this book just took me for a ride, and I'm really impressed with Alexandra Bracken and her writing style, because seeing her be able to create something like this with the Darkest Minds trilogy, then be able to do what she did with Passenger and Wayfarer, and then with her coming out with Prosper Writing, which is a more of a darker middle grade, it definitely shows a lot of versatility from her as an author. So I'm really glad that I've gotten to read from her and gotten to pick up this amazing trilogy. It was the perfect way to wrap up my reading for July because I just had a lot of fun with these. So now for some announcements regarding my channel. First things first, I recently did an interview with my friend Emily for Stay Bookish magazine because she's one of the writers for it, and so I am going to be their featured booktuber for September, which is when the issue comes out. And so I'll be leaving all the information down below if you guys want to check that out. I wanted to say a huge thank you to Emily for interviewing me. It was so much fun and she asked the absolutely best questions, and I'm so excited to get to see that come out and for you guys to get to read it and for myself to get to see the final product. It was so much fun to get to do that interview, and I'm really glad that I was able to take part. So thank you so much, Emily, for interviewing me, and I'm really excited for all of you guys to get to read it. And if you want to find out more, all of the information will be down below, as well as Emily's links if you want to go and follow her, because you definitely should. So I also recently did a collab with Caitlin over at Big Screen Books called Why I Read, and she pretty much asked a whole bunch of different booktubers to send in just a quick response as to why we read or why reading is so important to us. And Caitlin uploaded that video recently, so I'll leave it linked down below if you want to check it out. It was such an amazing video and I had the absolutely best time participating, and I had the best time seeing everyone's responses. There's a whole bunch of amazing booktubers featured in that video, so if you want to go and check it out, the link will be down below. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for letting me be a part of the project. I had so much fun with it. I am possibly maybe going to be doing another collab with her as she has some other things up her sleeve, and so I'm hoping to be able to do something a little bit more like that in the future, so more details will be coming on that soon. So then the last thing, as you guys know, I'm a part of the Diversity Readers Book Club, and so we recently announced our August pick, which is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. I got to meet Angie at Anderson's the week of booktubeathon the first day. We decided then eventually for this to be our August book, and so I'm really excited to get to read this and to be able to discuss it with all of you, because I know it deals with some really important subject matter, and I think that it's going to be a really important discussion. I think that we're going to get a lot of things out of it. So if you want to join us, pick up The Hate U Give now, and live show details and things will be coming very soon, but I'm really excited to get to read this with all of you, so I hope that you join us for the live show. So I think that about ends my July wrap up. That was just a lot of fun. I liked getting to do something a little bit more like that and get to talk about other things besides the books that I've been reading. So if you want to see more wrap ups like this, let me know. Yes, they may be a little bit longer, but I think it's worth it. So I'm gonna go. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with a new video. Goodbye!